Hey everyone, so I am here in Sydney, Australia with Stefan Molyneux, and we are going to be discussing my little run-in with the police in Lakemba, an alleged no-go zone, I think now confirmed no-go zone. But let's just get your thoughts just from watching my last video.
It was powerful stuff. I mean, we'd gone over a lot of the options that might happen in that area. The fact that the police would prevent you even from walking down the street and talking to people, that, as you point out, enforcing Sharia law, I don't think that came up in anyone's calculations, and that's kind of why to do it, because you're going to get things that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, so people understand, before we left that morning, we were kind of gauging, do we have enough security? What's going to happen? Are we going to be attacked quickly? And we had to look at all these things, and I wasn't there for more than 10-20 minutes before the police started coming up to us and following us and then stopping the video.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because the mainstream media here has come out and reported that nothing happened to me in Lakemba. First of all, I wasn't there for very long because I was kicked out. And second of all, something did happen that all of them were there watching and completely ignored. All of the papers published, the cop just came up to me to talk about diversity.
Well, so this is the challenge. So for those who don't know, our security tipped off the police to tell them where you were going to be, because
Just in case.
It's a courtesy to let them know. And then the police, we assume, I mean, nobody else, certainly wasn't anyone from our side, so then the police contacted the media and said, here's where you're going to be. Then the media swarmed you, and wasn't there one woman, she's this big giant cameraman, and she's like, no, coincidence. Just happened to be here in this happened to be on the same street corner of this big giant city at the same, and so the lies began as soon as they showed up.
Yeah, she told me she was the local crime reporter and she happened to be there. And
Just,
then tons of media start coming around and swarming me and taking photos. And
What a coinky-dink.
what a coincidence, exactly. And they start saying, why are you here? There's no reason to be here. Well, if there's no reason for me to be
Then
here,
it should be fine to walk around, right?
I don't think they would be there recording me. And this was frustrating. So I will admit, the first girl, her name was Eliza, and she published a terrible hit piece in the Telegraph about me. We got into a little debate, and she did say one thing that was accurate. It was kind of a gotcha on me, because I told her, well, you don't see too many British pubs in this area, do you? And she says, oh, there's one right across the street there. And there did happen to be one. But what really gets me after that interview is I'm trying to warn people about this forest fire going on. And I say, well, you don't see a whole lot of trees that aren't on fire here. And she says, there's one.
Yeah.
There's one. Therefore, I've owned you. I've wrecked you. It's debate is over. And the media is so bad at doing their job. They're looking for an exception to the giant problem we're facing with cultural replacement, just to cover up this huge issue.
Well, you have a giant area where a lot of the signs are in Arabic, where Arabic is being spoken, where it seems exclusively Islam is being practiced as a religion. No integration that you can see of, no adoption of Western values that we can see. Again, we're just looking at the surface and so on, and then say, but there's one British pub. And that erases everything to do with everything else that you saw. And then, of course, it was fascinating, though terrifying, to see the cop generating rules on the fly. Just making up laws, as far as I could tell, on the fly. Because for you to walk down a public street, perfectly legal. For you to engage in conversation with locals, perfectly legal, yet not.
It would be quite funny. I think at some point we'll release the whole footage. We just wanted to get it out as quick as possible before the media can spin their lies. But there's quite a bit of time where I'm discussing with the cop. I'm like, okay, so if I got rid of my cameras, could I walk down the street? Because he kept saying, oh, you're not allowed to do this because you're on private property. And then I'd point out, I'm not on private property. He'd say, you can't do this because you don't have a permit to film here. Okay, what if I get rid of my cameras? You don't have a license to be asking questions here. Well, you mentioned this. There were tons of media surrounding me doing the exact same thing.
Why is it not allowed for you to talk to a local, but the media can come up and film and interview you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just making things up on the fly because we all know that you were more reasonable than the locals. That's what the cop knew. It's like when we were talking to that crazy guy at the South African rally, which we'll put the video out for that as well, screaming at us to go away, to get lost, that he's colored because of our skin, and the color of our skin and so on. And the cops move us away. In other words, the cops do what the local community wants you to do, which is to go away, and they choose to act against you or against me because we're the most reasonable people. We're not going to cause a fuss. We're not going to kick up a problem. And so the most reasonable people are the ones who are shoveled aside and whose rights gets trampled on.
And I do wonder, because I didn't think we would encounter this in Australia. I expect the cops to be like that in the UK because they actually have this massive issue to cover up. The gangs there that we've seen in Telford, in Rotterdam or Rotherham, it's just a huge issue that they don't want people talking about because it's going to spark that powder keg of multiculturalism. But Australia is still very early on in this process. They've had race riots before. They have these kind of growing no-go zone areas. But this happening so early on, the censorship, what implications does it have for the future of Australia, in your opinion?
Well, it's what you said at the end, and hats off to you for an incredibly powerful line. This is conquered territory. This is conquered land. It's not. Is it part of Australia when you can't walk down the street and talk to people? How on earth is this integration supposed to happen if you're not even allowed to talk? The West is a very self-critical culture. That's what I talk about in the speech. One of the reasons why we've succeeded as a culture, at least to some degree, is because of the self-criticism. Are you not, and this conversation is going on in Canada as well, where they say, are you allowed to criticize Islam? And so far, the mainstream voices have been, well, yes, the Catholic Church has benefited from self-criticism, the Protestant churches and denominations have benefited, and therefore Islam should as well. But if there is a place where you can't walk down the street and you can't engage in conversation about values with people, is it even Australia? And that, looking at the video and where you guys were, it was like you went through this invisible barrier into some other place, whereas you point out the Sharia law is the law of the land, that you are not allowed to walk down the street and exercise your rights of free speech. How is that conceivably Australia if it's an exclusion to the laws that apply everywhere else?
And the big concern here too is we have an opportunity with YouTube to show people that this is happening so that we can potentially prevent these areas from forming more and more and more or getting stronger. But the mainstream media and the people who are still watching and contributing to the mainstream media, they were all there. They watched what happened, and their story takeaway that they put on the second page of the paper when I went to go grab my coffee this morning, their takeaway was absolutely nothing happened. I embarrassed myself. I walked through there and showed that it was a perfectly peaceful area. How do we reach out to those who still engage with the mainstream media when they're literally I remember I was talking to you this morning and I was pulling my hair. I was like, Stefan, how can they lie so blatantly? How can they do this? And you were just sitting there with a smile like, are you not used to this yet, Lauren?
Yeah, the joke was, I'm still bald and reporters are still lying. That's just the way that it plays out. And this is the astonishing thing to me, is seeing these lies that aren't even close to accurate. So the way they spun it was that you were doing some publicity stunt to sell these $700 tickets. And by the way, there are no tickets that are $700. There's some private dinners that are expensive, but no. So they didn't even get that lie wrong, that the whole idea was to provoke an incident in order to sell tickets to the venue, which of course is not the case at all. But they're lying even about they're mind reading, the mind reading that the reporters go through, that they know exactly why you're doing things and what your motivations are, which you're not revealing. And they get everything wrong about the story and don't report on the most important thing, which is that the policeman was making up rules as he went along to prevent you from causing a race riot. I believe that was the fundamental fear that the police had, that you go in there, start questioning and criticizing Islam, next thing you know, there's a race riot.
And that was another point that Channel 7 had. They always look for, what's the tiny little mistake Lauren made? And they said, Lauren said there were race riots in Lakemba. That was wrong. They were in the city across the street, or the town across the street, which I wasn't wrong. The race riots in
they spilled over.
The other city spilled over into Lakemba. But you pointed out, what was it, Channel 7, they published all these videos of the race riots going on, and they were like, got her, she was wrong, as they're showing proof that this multicultural experiment has failed in the past.
Well, there must be a lot of younger Australians, or maybe even older Australians, didn't even know these race riots happened.
Yeah.
And so now they're saying, no, she was wrong. The race riots happened here, not here. And they're like, wait, there were race riots? Now they're informing them about exactly what the concern is. And we have, of course, talked about doing sort of a tongue-in-cheek video of us going to the Christian area, because I'm an atheist, right? So go to a Christian area of town and say, okay, we are going to the Christian area. Everybody be ready. We need a lot of security just in case someone turns the other cheek and forgives us.
Yeah, call the police and tell them we're going to the Christian area.
If we call the police and say we're going to a Christian area, or we may in fact criticize Christianity, nobody would show up, nobody would care, because it's different with Islam.
Yeah, well, I've been walking over streets all over Sydney, and I haven't had the press running up to me. I felt like I was Kim Kardashian for the day. They're walking backwards, click, 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 getting all their photos of me looking angry, and man, you could see their faces though. I want everyone to know this. They were so smug at the beginning when I was walking through the street and no one was throwing bricks at me. They were just yelling at me in Arabic, and it was the first 10 minutes. And then as soon as the cops came up to me and said, you're gonna get hurt if you go here,
You're not
all of
welcome here.
Yeah, you're not welcome here. All of the reporters' faces fell.
Yeah.
And they're like, we just lost our story.
Yeah.
They found a way to spin it anyway.
No, they
but
fell until they remembered, oh wait, we can just make things up. So, and this is here's the chilling thing too. So this is how the media operates when you have a camera, when you have a crew, when you have witnesses, when you can publish in your own venue something which is going to get more views, I'm sure, and reads than the original hit piece. This is what the media does when there's clear photographic video evidence to the contrary. Can you imagine back in history when you didn't have alternative ways to get the information out, when you didn't have your own channel, when you didn't have high-def footage you could publish to the world? This is what they do when you have evidence. Imagine, like I'm just looking all the way back through history, everything I read when I was a kid, when there was no evidence to the contrary that could be published or retained. This is where they are now. Imagine where they were throughout history.
it's terrifying. It's terrifying the image the media can make for you, the lies they can spin. And the more terrifying part is they're covering up something that is fundamentally going to change and potentially destroy this nation if people don't have this information.
So there are people out there, Lauren. We had a reporter ask me about this, it was yesterday, the New Zealand reporter. They say, Steph, do you ever admit that you're wrong? Well, I'm going to, right here on camera right now, bow down to the goddess of social media, seriously, because I had my doubts about the value of what Lauren was doing. And we had a good conversation about it, and she was like, yeah, have your doubts. That's fine. and off she went, and to have been so utterly wrong about the value of a particular expedition is a very humbling experience, and I have never been more pleased to be so completely wrong about the value of what you were doing. And I just wanted to say, absolutely correct, wonderful job, and I think you really changed things in Australia with that.
Thank you so much, Steph.
Take care.
See you then. Bye, guys.